This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Emily Brass. Janet Stewart is off. The Millennium Library reopened today. It closed more than a month ago after a deadly stabbing. The city brought in beefed up security to help make staff and visitors feel safe. But as CBC's Cameron McLean reports, it remains to be seen whether these new measures will become permanent.
It's a new day at the Millennium Library. Patrons lined up to get inside. It's a moment many have been eagerly awaiting.
You can't imagine how much I miss the Millennium Library the last couple of days, which the library was closed.
Not everyone is happy about the measures the city took to get the library open.
We know that the problems of safety are deeply rooted in social problems. What we saw here today is pure theater. And the city needs to rethink how it goes about its security policies.
The library had been closed since December 11th when Tyree Kaye was stabbed to death inside. His mother told CBC News she approves of the new security.
We can't sit and pretend this didn't happen, and I'm glad that they're putting security measures in place, but I don't believe this is a way bigger issue than just the library can take on.
The city brought in more security guards as well as 2 police officers stationed just inside the gates. Now anybody coming into the library has to pass through this metal detector. Earlier this morning, CAO Michael Jack said these are interim measures while the city figures out what the permanent security situation at the library is going to look like.
We're going to try to work through as thoughtfully as we can to achieve a balance that makes sense for the community. I don't think the interim measures are the right long-term balance, and I'm hoping with some more thoughtful measures in place we can get there.
The city hired a security consultant to advise them. If the city removes the metal detector, some staff might not come back to work, according to the head of the union.
I've heard from staff that have said if they don't have security measures in place, that they feel that they are still in an unsafe work environment without metal detectors, without security. A lot of them were inquiring about the right to refuse.
Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham toured the facility this afternoon. He says it's too soon to know what security at the library will ultimately look like.
There is a safety audit that's being conducted right now, and so we'll wait for the outcome of that safety audit and the recommendations of that safety audit, and then we can make our determination from there. But these are preliminary measures, and they're interim measures, and we'll find out in the coming weeks.
The results of that safety audit are expected in the next few weeks. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Winnipeg woman is calling for more supports for youth after she was robbed and assaulted while waiting for a bus. It happened late Thursday night. Carissa Chaput was waiting for a bus at Chancellor Drive and Pembina Highway when she was attacked. The 18-year-old says 2 women and a man hit, stomped, bit, and scratched her. Chaput says she wants justice for what happened, but also thinks youth need more support so they don't hurt people.
I found potential in myself. I got a job. I'm graduating. They need to find potential in themselves too. They can't be doing this to people. It ruins families. What if they killed me?
Chaput's mother, Kim, also thinks more needs to be done to prevent this from happening to someone else's child. She says youth need more support, and especially when it comes to mental health.
What it's boiled down to is this now. Like, this is their way also of yelling help. You know, something needs to change because these children they're becoming hard.
Police have not charged anyone in connection with the robbery and assault. Well, the price of living keeps going up, and the Manitoba government says it's got something to help. CBC's Ian Fraze joins us live now from the newsroom. Ian, what does the province have in store?
Something to make life more affordable for everyone. Premier Heather Stephenson hinted that help is coming while in Lorette this morning. She was announcing funding for a new arena and library, which is basically a re-announcement of what the previous NDP government promised in 2016. On the subject of affordability, Stephenson says that unlike last year when checks went out to some people, like families with children and low-income seniors, this new affordability support, whatever it is supposed to help all Manitobans.
We'll have more specifics on that later this week, but I think we've heard from Manitobans that everyone's struggling to make ends meet these days, and so I think it's important that we look at everyone overall. There's very challenging inflationary pressures right now across the board.
Again, Stephenson isn't saying what relief is planned, but when she was asked about specific tax cuts like reducing the PST or gas tax, she says to wait until the spring when the budget is released, and at that point there could be some form of tax relief.
So lots of talk from Ottawa and the premiers that a deal for more healthcare funding could be signed soon. Stephenson represents the premiers as chair of the Council of Federation. What's she saying?
Yeah, Stephenson says that she's happy the Prime Minister is apparently willing to meet with the premiers.
I think there's progress because the Prime Minister, it sounds like, is willing to sit down with us. I don't like the sort of discussions through the media. I'd rather have, the opportunity to sit down at the table, which, we've indicated that before, but it sounds like there's more willingness to sit down now, which I think is great. I think that's what Canadians expect of us. And
a deal would be years in the making. The provinces have argued for significantly more money from Ottawa to help with health care. A breakthrough that appears to be comes as anger over the healthcare system seems to be growing across the country. Emily.
Thank you, Ian. That's CBC's Ian Fraze. Winnipeg's police chief says the city needs more 911 operators and dispatchers. Chief Danny Smythe says 911 is struggling to handle increasing call volumes. He's asked the Winnipeg Police Board to set aside funding to hire 18 more staff for 911. This would eventually cost the city $1.8 million a year. The chief says this could be partially paid for through a cell phone surcharge.
Only Ontario and Manitoba do not charge a 911 levy. There are some other ways that we could address where the funding for something like this would come from. Virtually every other province has a 911 levy.
The chief says he's confident there'll be money in this year's budget for the additional staff. City Council Finance Chair Jeff Brawadi says the budget will be made public in early February. A long legal suit surrounding residential schools came to an apparent conclusion over the weekend. Ottawa agreed to a $2.8 billion settlement. CBC's Diana Sumanak-Johnson takes a look at the agreement and the hopes for what it might achieve.
For former Chief Shane Godfredson, it's a moment to reflect and celebrate.
Very humbled and honored that we come to this resolution.
A $2.8 billion settlement between the federal government and 325 First Nations. 10 years after he first launched a class action lawsuit seeking reparations for harms done by Canada's residential school system.
It just goes to show, too, as First Nations governments, when we work together, great things can happen.
The announcement is actually the second settlement in the Godfredson case. This one provides reparations for the loss of language and culture as a result of residential schools.
What it can do is help address the collective harm caused by Canada's past, a deeply colonial one.
A federal court still has to approve the new settlement. Once it does, an initial lump sum payment of $200,000 will be made to each of the 325 First Nations. $2.8 billion will be placed in a trust fund that will operate for 20 years. The fund will be governed by a board of 9 Indigenous directors. Still, the work ahead won't be easy, says this Indigenous languages expert.
At the moment, there is not one university in Canada in which a First Nations or an Indigenous language teacher can gain credentials and gain the knowledge they need to be able to teach. There needs to be a real organized way of being able to support the people with the proper kind of resources that are needed to do the work.
But for now, she says, this is mostly good news for Indigenous people, a view shared by Shane Godfredson.
Now it's our time to start turning, our way of life around to be, learn our languages and our culture. So exciting times, definitely.
a chance to recover cultures once stripped away. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Hundreds of Winnipeggers took to the ice and enjoyed a sunny Saturday on the Nestawaya River Trail. Here's a joyful look at the frosty scene at the Forks.
This is the opportunity to come here to skate on ice on the middle of the river. It's going to be exciting.
Today, as the weather is good, we decided to come again. My husband, he bought 2 sticks for hockey, so he would like to play with my son.
Before I come to Canada, I always want to see the snow.
Looks like some good times at the Forks. CBC meteorologist John Sauder is here now with a look at the forecast. Welcome back, John.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Great to be here with you and to you. And nice to see the images from the Forks. Some new Canadians getting out and enjoying our winter.
It was busy. I was at the Wolseley Winter Wonderland section. It was amazing today.
Amazing. Yeah, you know, this coming weekend, and you'll learn this through the newscast tonight and through my weathercast, there is colder weather on the way. But I want to start with some news and some graphics that show you some of the numbers so far in January. You know, today was the warmest day of the month so far, but it all happened early this morning. Temperature's been falling through the day. Earlier today, we were at -1. Great morning to get out for a walk. Snowflakes falling. As a matter of fact, that snow amounted to about 3 or 4 centimeters in Winnipeg, and that's the first notable snowfall in about a month. Prior to today, only 2.8 centimeters this month and about 5.2 centimeters since December 23rd. Thanks to WeatherLogics for the numbers, but in the last month only 5 centimeters, and we get a little bit more tonight. I'll tell you more about that in a second as well. South of us and west of us will be a little bit more. Right now, -11. I was thinking around -11, -12. By 4 p.m. we were at -10, and the temperature will continue to fall as we head into the overnight period. And we're seeing some breaks in the cloud late this afternoon, but generally either partly cloudy or mainly cloudy overnight. This is the satellite radar. Not much to see here as far as radar is concerned. That shows us the snow that's falling out of the cloud. But we are seeing some breaks in that cloud now through the Red River Valley and areas just to the south. A few hours ago, still had some snow south of Winnipeg. And this is what it looks like on Futurecast. So looking forward in time, and you can see that as we move through tomorrow, a lot of that snow is south of us and west of us, but not really too much of that here in the Red River Valley. I'm going to go back and show you that loop once again, because as we get into Thursday, that's when the next weather maker is on the way. So there we are, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and then Thursday another clipper system is developing, and it'll bring slightly warmer air, but it'll bring a more significant snowfall. So this is Thursday 8 a.m. At that time we're just cloudy. By the afternoon, winds are really picking up, and that looks to be about another 2 to maybe 4 centimeters of snow. In the next 24 hours though, not much in Winnipeg, even less out to the east, but you can see a few centimeters around Portage, Morden, Winkler, Carman, and out toward Melita, maybe as much as 5 by about supper time tomorrow. Tonight, though, the low is -17. That's still milder than normal, thanks to the cloud cover. Few flurries in the morning, but more like periods of light snow in the afternoon. Again, that amount will be higher south of us, south of the Trans-Canada, and especially to the southwest of Winnipeg, but mainly cloudy. North winds not all that strong. And then we look at the longer range numbers, and we see that next system moving through on Thursday afternoon, evening, and night, and then kind of a flat temperature trend on Friday. The really cold stuff shows up in the 7-day forecast, and I'll have that for you shortly.
Thanks, John.
You bet.
The start of the Year of the Rabbit was celebrated yesterday around the world and right here in Winnipeg. The Lunar New Year means brisk business for some restaurants and bakeries. CBC's Jeff Stapleton captured the lion dance at Sunwa Supermarket.
My name is Bernard Panthamong, and I'm the president of the Flying Lion Dance Troupe.
The lion dance, it's really meant to chase away evil spirits and to bring good luck and prosperity for the new year. What you saw with the lettuce is called the choi chang, or picking of the greens. So what it really symbolizes, the lion grabs the lettuce. The color green is similar to wealth or money. So when the lion eats it and then spits out the lettuce back to the audience, it's like showering the audience with wealth and prosperity and for the new year.
Jenny Lee. I'm the owner of Ming's Bakery. Well, one of the owner of Ming's Bakery. We bake different Asian goods, buns, cakes. This is sticky rice cake. It's only made during the new year. This is the last one I reserved for myself. Otherwise, it is sold out. In the Chinese culture, it is important that in New Year, we are stocked up on rice and everything that you need. Resembles that the whole next year that's gonna come our way is filled with goodness, and we're ready for it.
My name is Jeffrey Young, owner of Kam Kun Garden. Lunar New Year to us is very important, in the Chinese community, even if we are in Canada, because this is a year like our family gathering, like everybody wish everybody like healthy and good luck, things like that. It's a very important day for family.
When we come back, a Lunar New Year celebration near Los Angeles turned deadly. We'll have the latest on the attack over the weekend that left 11 dead and several others injured. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Authorities are searching for a motive in the mass shooting Saturday at a dance club near Los Angeles. A gunman opened fire during Lunar New Year celebrations. 11 people died and several more were injured. It's the deadliest shooting in the U.S. since the attack last May on a school in Texas. CBC's Cameron McIntosh has the latest.
Digging into the crime scene and the history of the shooter, police in Monterey Park say they're still trying to figure out what motivated a 72-year-old man to open fire in this dance studio, a place where he was reportedly known by patrons.
The why is a big part of this. The problem is we may never know the why, and we have to work past that.
Saturday night around 10:20, this dance studio was full of people celebrating the Lunar New Year. A man started firing with an automatic pistol.
At some point, we'll probably have a fragmented why, but I don't know if we'll ever have the full story.
Less than 30 minutes later, he tried to enter another club nearby.
I needed to take this weapon, disarm him, or else everybody would have died.
Brandon Say explained how he disarmed him this morning on ABC television.
I was able to pull the gun away from him, shove him aside, create some distance, point the gun at him, intimidate him.
The shooter fled in a white van. Pulled over hours later by police, he shot himself.
There's so much fear and trepidation.
For many in the Asian American community, Lunar New Year was to mark a sort of new beginning after the pandemic, which saw the community subjected to hate. To have this violence come from within is jarring.
The hate doesn't always come from outside of the community. It can come from inside.
We cannot let mass shootings be the norm, not here in Monterey Park, not in California, not anywhere in the United States of America.
But already this year, the United States has had more than 30 mass shootings just 3 weeks in. This one, the deadliest so far. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Washington.
Another school shooting south of the border, this time in Des Moines, Iowa. 2 students were killed today in what police describe as a targeted shooting. An adult employee was also injured. 3 suspects have been arrested. The shooting was at an educational program called Starts Right Here, which is affiliated with the local school district. The program helps at-risk youth. Pressure is mounting on Germany to lift its veto on tanks it built so they can be donated to Ukraine's war effort. Several countries want to give some of their Leopard 2 tanks to Kyiv, and Berlin's hesitation to give approval is proving frustrating for at least one European leader. CBC's Abby Kuadasan has more from London.
Poland says it will formally ask Germany for authorization to send Leopard 2 tanks from its own stockpile to Ukraine. Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki still suggested permission was of secondary importance. Berlin sells these German-made tanks on the condition that countries gain its consent before re-exporting them. And even though Germany has provided about 12 billion euros in aid to Ukraine and has agreed to send heavy weapons like mortars, it continues to face criticism for being slow to make decisions as war rages on the continent.
Germany is an engine of Europe, the biggest partner in the European Union, and it creates also a particular responsibility. And I hope that there will be not a certain ambivalency, but we will have to act immediately.
On Sunday, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock explained her country would not stand in the way of Leopard 2 deliveries, but added that Berlin hasn't been asked. That comment didn't clarify matters because today, a German government spokesperson said a decision had not been made and would not be rushed. Warsaw has suggested it'll send 14 of its tanks even without a green light.
So the diplomatic consequences for Poland from taking this decision wouldn't be too disastrous. But the capacity of Poland to provide a significant number of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, given its own requirements as a frontline country, are limited.
Another consequence would be that German manufacturers would not be able to send spare parts or provide technical assistance for these tanks if their government isn't on board. Ukraine says it needs Western tanks, particularly Leopard 2s, now to shift the battlefield dynamics in its favor. Abby Kuadasan, CBC News, London.
Pay hikes proposed by the Union for Canada Revenue Agency workers are raising questions. The union is calling for a series of increases over 3 years to bump up wages more than 30%. It says the raise is needed to keep up with inflation, but some are calling their demands, quote, crazy. CBC's Nicole Williams has more.
It's a historic ask, but the union that represents CRA workers says it's necessary to keep up with the rising cost of living.
People are having a hard time out there to make ends meet, and so that's why we're asking for a new contract with decent wage increases that keep up with inflation.
Here's the breakdown of the proposal. First, the union wants a one-time 9% wage adjustment so it can be on par with other federal employees in similar positions. Then, wages would increase by 4.5% the first year and then 8% for the second and third years. Compounded over 3 years, it's a total of more than 30%. The union says it's fair pay with inflation. Others see it as a cash grab.
They're using the inflation as an excuse to gouge Canadian taxpayers that can't afford these crazy demands.
And he's not the only critic. The CRA has filed a complaint against the union to a federal public sector labor board. It argues the union has failed to bargain in good faith and make every reasonable effort to reach a collective agreement.
I've never heard of demands anywhere close to this.
Jock Climie is a labor lawyer based in Ottawa. He's helped negotiate collective agreements with the federal government for over 20 years. He says this might be a sign of things to come.
We are seeing inflationary rates now at levels we haven't seen in 30 years. That combined with the most recent pandemic, I think has led to a lot of unions and employees being more aggressive in terms of their demands.
But union officials say members just want a reasonable offer and are willing to play hardball. The union announced nationwide strike votes earlier this month.
We're going to do our strike votes, get a strong strike mandate, and we're going to shut down the CRA so they get the message clear that we're serious and we're tired of waiting.
Votes are scheduled to begin at the end of January, just ahead of tax season. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
Senior members of the Trudeau government have gathered in Hamilton for a 3-day cabinet retreat. On the agenda is a list of pressing issues the Prime Minister will need to discuss with his inner circle. CBC's David Cochrane looks at the priorities for the Liberals before the House of Commons returns next week.
And it's all to go today?
Yes, please.
Awesome.
Whenever the cabinet goes on the road, the Prime Minister likes to make his presence known. And so a lunch stop at a local restaurant as Justin Trudeau and his cabinet kick off a 3-day retreat in Hamilton. Hi there. The high cost of living, especially for things like food, are at the top of the agenda as Trudeau and his ministers finalize their plans for the upcoming budget. The cabinet will hold high-level discussions on the state of the economy with the hope that interest rates have hit their peak and any downturn in growth or the job market will be short and shallow. They will also take stock of the state of their political arrangement with the NDP, the confidence and supply agreement that is supposed to run until 2025, so long as the Liberals live up to their end of the bargain. The Liberals have met the first test of expanding dental care. The next step is to make progress on pharmacare.
I hope we'll have some progress soon. There's been a lot of progress over the weekend. I've had a number of conversations with premiers again over the weekend.
But of more immediate concern is striking a deal with the premiers on health funding. Over the past week, sources at all levels have reported progress on a deal. The framework is an across-the-board increase in health transfers, backstopped by a series of one-on-one deals to meet the specific needs of each province and territory. The plan is to seal the deal at a First Minister's meeting. The question is when.
I'm optimistic that we're making progress, and at the right moment, as the Prime Minister has always said, he'll sit down with his fellow First Ministers.
While the precise timing of that First Minister's meeting isn't known, the premiers have been pushing for a face-to-face before the middle of February. The goal is to get money into a stressed system as soon as possible and get a long-term commitment on health care funding by the federal budget. David Cochrane, CBC News, Hamilton.
It's a scenario many homeowners can barely imagine. Having your home mortgaged without your knowledge or even sold out from under you. CBC has uncovered new details about a scam with ties to organized crime. CBC's Farah Morali explains.
that's a red flag right away. Okay.
In this file folder, photocopies of countless fake IDs, allegedly used to commit real estate fraud. Private investigator Brian King has been hired by a title insurance company to find those responsible.
Right now we have 30 active files, at least 30.
And that's just here in the GTA?
Yeah.
Many of King's cases involve individuals using fake ID to impersonate a legitimate homeowner. They then place a new or second mortgage on the home and take off with the proceeds. He also has cases where people use fake ID to rent homes. Once they get the keys, others impersonate the real homeowners and sell the property, again taking off with the money.
Typically it's organized crime that's behind it. The people that actually are front-facing on the frauds, the people using the IDs, posing as the homeowners, are not the ultimate people that are receiving the funds. They're usually paid stand-ins.
Of King's 30-plus cases, 4 involve a home sold without the owner's knowledge. But there are more than that.
There are 3 other title insurance companies in Canada, in addition to the one King works for. They step in when these types of frauds happen to cover costs and get the home back to the true owner. These companies tell CBC News they too have seen cases of stolen homes, and not just here in Toronto.
They're largely happening in the Greater Toronto area and the Greater Vancouver area.
Experts say the number of cases started picking up in late 2019 and estimate title insurance companies have lost around $200 million in title and mortgage fraud cases since then.
We went from 0 of those claims to now many dozens of those claims. It's not sustainable over the long term, so we really need the whole real estate industry working together to weed out these fraudsters.
We're seeing a level of sophistication in that area that we've never seen before. It's very organized.
Given the volume of cases, some are wondering why there's been so little attention.
We were told over and over and over again that we were the only people. This was such a rare situation.
Melissa Walsh's 95-year-old great-uncle nearly lost his home in Toronto's East End after fraudsters used fake IDs to rent his home, then impersonated him to list it for sale.
Hearing that this has happened to potentially over 30 other families is hard to wrap your head around. And again, I don't understand why this hasn't been discussed.
Meanwhile, behind the scenes, with the recent rise in cases, investigators like King have their work cut out for them.
It's a very painstaking process to try and understand who's behind it.
Quietly tracking down those responsible for a sophisticated scam that's growing. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Spotify is the latest tech company to announce job cuts. The music streaming service says it's chopping 600 jobs, or about 6% of its global workforce. The Stockholm-based company says it's restructuring in a bid to bring costs more into line. Spotify's CEO says the revamp involves reshuffling management. Big tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have announced tens of thousands of job cuts this month as the economic outlook weakens. Still ahead, John Sauder is back with a look at the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Sunwing Airlines is cutting some flights from 3 maritime airports to sunny destinations. The company also canceled scheduled departures from a few other Canadian cities earlier this month. CBC's Brett Ruskin has more on how that's left a lot of people's vacation plans up in the air.
Getting away from this wet maritime weather is a little bit more difficult now with Sunwing's cuts to its service. The latest cuts affecting Halifax, Fredericton, Moncton. For example, Halifax currently has 2 weekly flights down to Veradero, Cuba on Sunwing planes. That is being cut down to just 1 weekly flight as of mid-February. This joins the long list of cities that have seen Sunwing service cut. We're looking at Regina, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, North Bay, Sudbury as well, all seeing reductions in service for Sunwing. These cuts actually took place about 2 weeks ago. We're just starting to hear about them now from various travelers. Travelers had been told, hey, listen, you had booked flights previously, months ago perhaps. Those flights will no longer be happening. We'll give you a refund for these flights and you can rebook your service. Customers and clients and these travelers have, for the most part, said that they are frustrated, but to a certain degree understanding because they are receiving refunds and there was that huge influx in both volume of travelers in that holiday period, but also issues encountered by airlines, including Sunwing. But many travelers are finding that even though they get their money refunded, that they still have to figure out plans to perhaps change dates, which might be difficult when you're booking things down south. For example, theme parks, Disney, you have that non-refundable ticket perhaps. Also, flights to book now are certainly going to be more expensive than they were perhaps months ago. So just the latest round of cuts for Sunwing Airlines. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Well, Canadians know the damage from post-tropical storm Fiona was bad, but seeing is believing. New drone footage reveals the extent of the damage in Prince Edward Island. The data gathered from these images could help residents and officials protect the shoreline in the future. CBC's Nancy Russell explains.
Andy McDonald and Luke Malash packed up their drones here at the Canadian Centre for Climate Change and Adaptation and hit the road as soon as they could after Fiona. What they saw from the drone was widespread damage to PEI's coastline.
It was kind of heart-wrenching. You'd show up to places, there'd be empty foundations, you'd be driving along the coast and you'd see the wreckage of someone's house washed up. There'd be huge stretches of coastal road where we'd drive before, and now there's no road.
Crews from the UPEI Climate Lab have been monitoring PEI's coastline since 2016 and have never seen erosion like this.
And in that time, the largest losses we've seen, which were very rare, were in the 5-meter loss areas. But after this storm, we've seen areas with more than 10 meters lost, sustained over an area which we've never seen before and which we've never seen in the historical records either. So yeah, just very shocking.
The drone crew made it to more than 25 locations around PEI. They usually monitor more than 100, so there will be more flights to come in the spring. And they expect damage from Fiona is going to change their work moving forward.
More people are going to be interested. They'll see that, hey, this area was hit really hard. Can you add somewhere there? And hopefully we can oblige with that.
The information the UPEI crew is gathering will be shared with the provincial government. It is used to make decisions about coastal development and preparing for climate change.
I think that as an island made of sandstone, figuring a way to protect our coastlines is important.
For now, the drone crew will spend the winter doing a deep dive into the data they gathered in 2022, including the damage from Fiona. Nancy Russell, CBC News, St. Peters Bay.
CBC meteorologist John Sauder is back with a forecast. What can we expect this week?
Yeah, you know what? We can expect temperatures to kind of bounce around a little bit and then get really, really cold toward the weekend, and all that is coming up. Let's look at some current temperatures first of all. And, you know, today we've seen falling temperatures through the day. A -1 will go down as the high, but that's from earlier this morning. Right now, -11 in Winnipeg. That's at the airport downtown at the Forks. We're at -10, and temperatures from here will will continue to fall. And you can see that minus 11 in Steinbach, minus 13 in Selkirk, and minus 9 now in the Morris area. Also out around Portage, minus 10, minus 12 for Swan River and Dauphin at the moment. And then back towards the north, a little bit farther north of Winnipeg, it really starts to cool off. Right now in Barons River at minus 22, we've had a clearer sky and a brighter sky across most of northern Manitoba, although some cloud will stick around through tonight and tomorrow around Flin Flon and the Paw. But these are the current numbers across the north, getting close to minus 30 in Churchill, minus 31 right now in the Gillam area. Tonight across northwestern Ontario, lots of cloud cover, some evening flurries hanging around Dryden, and then overnight lows are milder than the seasonal normal. That would be around minus 23 or so. Looking at a minus 17 in Winnipeg, and we'll see a few flurries, but not much else in the way of snow. Same around the Steinbach, and a lot of that through the evening hours and then settling down overnight with some breaks in the cloud. Periods of light snow tonight around Brandon, also in Swan River. Some evening flurries around the Morden area, across into northern Manitoba. Lots of clear sky. Temperatures will continue to drop off in Thompson, Gillam, Churchill, Lynn Lake. And then you look at tomorrow, and it's a bright sky, but temperatures really struggling. Churchill only getting to a minus 28 to minus 30. Thompson in the sunshine, minus 21. Mid-minus teens with a sun-cloud mix in the west tomorrow. And here across the south, we'll see some periods of light snow here and there, and temperatures pretty close to the seasonal normal. That, for Winnipeg anyway, would be right around minus 12. And I think tomorrow afternoon we should be right around minus 10, slightly warmer in Steinbach and areas out toward the Whiteshell. Minus 8s and minus 9s tomorrow, northwestern Ontario as well. Some cloud cover around, more of a sun-cloud mix in Red Lake. Minus 9 tomorrow in Churchill.
Thank you, John.
You bet.
Coming up after the break, we'll speak to the Manitoba Lung Association about the growing concern around vaping among minors. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The door is back on the girls' washroom at St. James Collegiate in Winnipeg. It was removed last week for a full day. The St. James Assiniboia School Division says the door had been removed as a, quote, temporary solution to the growing problem of vaping in washrooms and related safety concerns. But how did the students feel about it?
It's humiliating to us because it's honestly terrible.
I think it was just rash decision making that shouldn't have happened.
Suspending kids and taking off bathroom doors off female washrooms that everybody uses, including teachers. I don't think they handled that very well.
At first I was really uncomfortable just with their decision because I don't think it was the most effective. It's not going to stop kids from vaping in the bathrooms, and it's definitely not going to solve any addiction issues. Because I think that really is the root of the problem.
Really no prevention, it was just kind of a jump straight to, and no talking about it. Well, there was talking about it at the start of the year, but it was just kind of a jump straight into something drastic.
They should have brought in an addiction counselor to actually handle the problem better, because suspending children and taking off the doors isn't going to do anything. People are still going to continue to vape. It's an addiction. You can't just stop just because you get suspended from school.
They just keep suspending them for 2 days, so it's not like they're actually trying to do anything about it. The suspension lasts very minimal, and they're not doing any long-term consequences.
Well, that washroom door was reinstalled on Friday, and the school division's acting superintendent promised staff will continue to discuss the dangers of vaping with students. To get a better understanding of those dangers, I spoke earlier with Neil Johnston, President and CEO of the Lung Association of Manitoba. Neil, how dangerous is vaping for minors?
Well, for minors, there's definitely more risks than in adults. All vapors, all people using e-cigarettes and vaping, will have risks of the substances that are in the vapor and that is heated. But the youth have extra risk in that their brains are still developing. So the nicotine has a double effect. Not only does it have the dependence generating effects, the dopamine system, pleasure centers, and things like that, but it can also affect brain development, and that will down the road affect behavior and other types of negative impacts as young people grow and develop. So it is something to be very concerned about in youth. Of course, it's to be concerned about for everybody, but youth there's a special concern because of the nicotine and youth.
Yeah, for a long time, vaping was marketed as a safer alternative to smoking cigarettes. What do we know now about how those two compare?
Well, definitely, I think vape products can be safer, but really the bar is really low. So, tobacco has been established, as reported by the World Health Organization, to kill about 50% of the people who smoke over time. So the bar is so low that even, we don't know exactly what the long-term effects of vaping are. We're getting some more ideas, but the bar is so low that even, if we could say safer, is that 40% less deaths or 10% or where are we? So it's really not something that we can say that is safe, and it's really not something we recommend as a smoking cessation. We don't know enough about it yet and how to use it. And it certainly wasn't intended for youth to take up vaping as a new habit.
Well, and of course, it's illegal to sell or give vaping products to minors. How do teens typically get vapes?
Well, it's the age-old ways of getting black market products, and I think it's realtors, retailers that are not following the regulations. It's from friends and family members, that kind of thing. Those kind of places.
And of course, there's been controversy over the way St. James Collegiate handled the vaping problem at that school. What do you think they should have done differently?
Well, certainly, as soon as a problem is identified, have a dialogue, and get the people that are involved talking about it. The Lung Association has some school-based programming. It's called Lungs Are for Life. And those programs help educate young people about the hazards of smoking and vaping. So instituting those kind of programs. And then working with the community, because this is more than just about schools. It's about families. It's about community clubs and sporting groups, and the whole community around youth we feel need to get involved in this whole conversation.
Well, yeah, speaking of which, we have 30 seconds left, Neil, but what role can parents play in discouraging this habit in their children?
Well, be open-minded, be non-judgmental, have a conversation, set aside time to have a chat about it, and go get together with your youth and maybe research about it, and have that conversation, and then work with, if they turns out to be nicotine dependent, then you'll need to work with the physician to find out, to determine the proper way of reducing the nicotine dependence.
Thanks, Neil.
Happy to help.
Still ahead, John Sauder is back with the 7-day forecast, and we'll have the daily lift. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Well, you've probably been hearing about it, some colder weather on the way for later this week. Well, why is that going to happen? We're going to see the upper level flow kind of dip into the eastern prairies, kind of like this. This is a run that takes us out towards Saturday. So the cold air right now is to the north, but then it starts to make its move down into not only the eastern prairies, but pretty much the western prairies as well. All of Canada will be engulfed in this colder weather as we get into the later part of the week. In the meantime, some more periods of light snow tomorrow. Maybe 2 to 4 centimeters. Second half of Thursday, Friday, flat or falling temperature trend. And then lots of sunshine, but very cool. Minus 30s for overnight lows. Daytime highs Saturday, Sunday, and Monday struggling to get past about minus 23 or minus 24 degrees. So very cold weather on the way. This pair of lucky pups are making the most of winter thanks to the best backyard a dog could ever bark for.
That's right. A Winnipeg dog owner builds a canine winter wonderland every year for his pugs, Tino and Sadie. Here's your Daily Lift.
Hello, I'm Brian K. Anderson out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. This is Sadie, the girl, and this one's Tino, Valentino. He was born on Valentine's Day. Well, I started this 13 years ago with 3 other dogs. Well, usually it takes about 40 hours labor. Come home from work, I'll work outside maybe a couple half hours at a time, and then it's too cold, I'll go inside and warm up. When they're inside, I'll bring out a bag and I'll shake in front of their faces and watch them drool, and I'll come out and put it everywhere. Every year is always different, eh? If we have lots of snow, I'll make a lot of tunnels. Sometimes, I think there's about 40 or 50 tunnels they can run through and run on and in. Yeah, they love it. Everybody has a good time. A lot of people give nice comments on Facebook and TikTok and that, so it's a good feeling. The border town with Norway and Sweden, there's one town on both sides. They have the most pugs per capita in all of the world, and they make snow tunnels there. It's been like 20, 30 years, so I learned from them. Any pug owner can tell you, pugs hate being inside in the wintertime. So they want to be outside constantly. So this is a good way to keep them out for 10, 15 minutes every time. Other than that, they're just itching to come outside.
Those are some lucky pugs there.
Yeah, absolutely. Janet would love that story. She's a big pug fan, so.
She would have loved it. Well, that was the CBC Winnipeg News. We'll be back at 11. Have a great evening.
Good night.